friends! Welcome back to the Messed Up Movies Podcast, the podcast celebrating movies and filmmakers that embrace the unhinged, the insane, the outrageous, the off-kilter, and the all-around kind of messed up fun you can't take your eyes off of. What's up, everybody? Welcome to our month of Amour. We're going to call this the Be Still My Heart curation. And we are starting with an absolute classic of the genre of Love Eternal. I am your host, Griffey, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and guy who always wakes up when he hears Korn,
Alex Dandino. Friends, do you like movies? So do we. We've got so many movies on the docket here. Over at Misfit Parade, over at Messed Up Movies Podcast. Check us out. You got to really lock into our Patreon, of course. For only $1 a month, you can get invited to our Discord and join all the fun, including even voting on some fun series, some things we're doing. We're of course about to amp into our Black Mirror watch.
Black Mirror miniseries.
So
we got Tales from the Crypt miniseries, Patreon exclusive episode.
I just by accident it was just on TV, which is not a thing anymore, but it was just on TV, was the first episode of Black Mirror, and I just sat down and was like, this is so good. I cannot wait.
Man versus Pig. It's going to be one of the great miniseries. Join us over there. Find Misfit Parade on YouTube. Subscribe there. MisfitParade.com to keep up with all the production news of our first feature film, Mr. Cream Jean's Hidey Hole. We've just started filming the next segment. We have lots of fun stuff over there. We'd love to have you. TikTok, Shorts, Reels, share with your friends, 5-star ratings, and reviews. That all helps us out. That's a free way to help us out. You can even join the Messed Up Movies Podcast Patreon as a free member just to see what we're doing. Alex.
Yeah.
Every February, we like to dabble
to talk about love.
Amour, right? The month of Amour.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about Amour, right, like Gary Oldman once said, right, I traveled through oceans of time to find you. Sometimes love never dies. As we learn in the classic romantic yarn, The Queen of the Damned. Would you like to hit us up with the pertinent information to start our conversation?
No problem. Queen of the Damned came out in 2002. It is the second film based on created from the Anne Rice stories, the vampire Lestat, by Anne Rice, like I said, directed by Michael Rymer, starring Stuart Townsend, who was cast after he was let go from Lord of the Rings.
All cheekbones, that guy.
Yeah, they got into 4 days of shooting Lord of the Rings, and they fired him.
Who was he in Lord of the Rings? Legolas?
Aragorn.
What?
You didn't know this?
The vampire Lestat in this movie was fucking Aragorn?
Stuart Townsend was the original casting for Aragorn. They got 4 days into production, and they were like, he is way too young to be Aragorn. Hire Viggo Mortensen now.
Wow. That is one of... I don't want to shit on Stuart Townsend too much. I'm about to talk about his movie. That is one of the great decisions in the history of cinema. You really need to. There's
other documentaries about this situation. You should watch. It's pretty fascinating, honestly. The story itself of how they figured it out is pretty fascinating.
Queen of the Damned was lucky to get him. Don't get me wrong. He looks much more like an undead vampire skinny guy than the returning king.
Than the Return of the King. Yeah. He needed a job, so he showed up. However, he is second billing to the great Aaliyah.
Yeah,
as, Queen Akasha.
Come on. That's what we all take from this
And
movie.
then there's a bunch of French people and Jonathan Davis. So here we go. Let's talk about it.
Marguerite, Moreau. Yeah.
Connie Moreau from the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah. So from Mighty Ducks to librarian from some weird order that adopts orphans, makes them read stuff, but also says, hey, you're going to read all these tales of titillation. Don't get too into it.
I'm going to, in terms of synopses, this is a pretty easy one, but I am going to read the first line from the Wikipedia article about it, because this will tell you everything you need to know about the movie. The sound of a new metal band arouses the vampire Lestat de Lioncourt from a lengthy slumber, and he proceeds to take over as their lead singer. I need no more explanation for this film at all.
Okay, so let's start here. This movie not the most beloved film to wider audiences. I think what this film is most known for is it had a killer soundtrack, right? Jonathan Davis wrote these vampire-esque songs, right? Somehow, when they were doing the rights between movie to album, Jonathan Davis's voice could not be the one who sang on the songs, as I read. So they had Chester Bennington, David Draymond, Wayne Static all come in and record versions of these songs. This was a perennial CD in my Discman collection. I fucking loved this album.
If you were a new metal kid, as Griff was.
Yes, I was a new metal kid.
If you were a new metal person, this was the record. This was the one. It was Wayne Static, David Draymond, Chester Bennington, Marilyn Manson, and Jay Gordon from Orgy.
Yeah, so Jay Gordon from Orgy. One of these things is not quite like the others. Chester's amazing. David Draymond, amazing. Wayne Static, rest in peace. So good. This was a classic. So I feel like this movie, more people loved and cherished the soundtrack than the film. I will tell you this, it had been a long time. I have also slumbered a long time since I last watched this movie.
I think most of existence has.
Yeah, it's not Interview with a Vampire. Like, it's fine.
Okay.
I want to start here.
Yeah.
This movie is an interesting jumping off point with our obsession with sexy vampires, right? This whole movie's kind of a starfucker thing. That Lestat just comes back and he's like, there's all these sad, broken, Hot Topic teenagers that just need some doofus to worship. And he steps into that fucking fishnet attire so easily and adapts and takes over the world. So I have two questions. Why do we love sexy vampires so much? And if someone came out and it was like, yeah, I'm like a real vampire, I can fly and do vampire shit on stage, wouldn't that be the coolest thing ever?
All right. Well, I'll start with your second question first. I think it would be unnerving.
Well, it is one of those small details they don't really address in the movie that this would upend society as we know
everybody is just sort of, well, I think because, again,
when you know there's real vampires, are you clocking in at Chipotle?
Well, there's only the people in the band know that only the people in the band and their like tour manager who brings him people to eat are the only people who are aware that he actually is a vampire. The rest
other
of the
reporters think they have that like bullpen shot where he's on the giant like Big Brother screen,
Jumbotron, yeah,
and they're like, aren't the other vampires get like they're playing into the bit?
There's the bit. Like again, I think like the bit works. So again, it's one of those things like if he never reveals himself until his one concert out in Death Valley and all this other shit, you're like, okay, it's Mystique, why not? Like you can buy that kind of like, again, all it is good marketing. That's all.
Right, but this is different than did Marilyn Manson have his rib removed so he could suck his own dick and was actually Paul from the Wonder Years. If this guy's telling the truth.
It's actually not.
This is world-shattering
until the actual concert when actual vampires show up and they all fight on stage in that weird little sequence.
The $6 million man sounds.
What it is great marketing because again, like but that's what it is. Great marketing, great rumors. Like, oh, I hear Lestat's a real vampire. Nah, that's horse shit. There's no such thing. Blah blah blah. Like. If you keep him on a giant Jumbotron away from the rest of society and he's just doing his thing, the only people who really know are the band he shows up to. So it would be a very cool thing. It would absolutely upend society. However, in the context of this movie, it's never proven until like the very end of the movie. And even the end of the movie, you're just like, I mean, we all figured that out.
We see later they go back to the Telemaskin place where David's just like back at work. Yeah. And people are just like walking around the streets as if Lestat walking down the street would immediately be the most famous man in the world. It's like, we watched you murder people on stage and be flown away by that insanely hot lady. Who's that? Like, I want to know more about her.
He's also in England, and it's just one of those things you're like, okay, obviously, like the Beatles, it would have been a Beatles thing. So, but whatever. There's a whole other... Like that, it makes no sense in and of itself. But I think that, it's 2002. Like it's the dawn of the interwebs, and we're looking at like MTV News still. Mm-hmm. Even though you watched MTV News and 99.9% of the time their news reporting was accurate, it was still MTV. It's not like we were all just like, well,
I love thinking back to an era where we expected journalistic integrity from MTV.
Yeah,
and now we expect that from literally no one.
Like,
all right,
MTV
so let's
News
bomb
had
into
more
the movie.
And then your first.
Okay.
What was the first question again?
Our hot vampire thing.
Oh, I get it. I mean, look, Andrea and I watched this last night, but like Andrea loves vampire shit, and I think it's just because it's this lust eternal. Like eating people is not sexy, but like lusting it. But like when you, I think a lot of the times for modern television and for modern movies, and we just saw this in Nosferatu even. Not necessarily hot, but like this is sort of the similar vibe, which is lust for, your next meal, and lust for people, like lust for humanity. Lust is such a huge part of vampire
When
ethos.
I lust for my next meal, it just turns people off. It's an unfair standard, we've said.
I agree, but I think that the ethos of vampire is so like built on lust, like it's love and lust and those kinds of things. Like this,
I'd rather be a vampire than any other monster.
This eternality of love, pursuit of not being lonely. That's something that's universal for everybody. So I think it makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'd give up the sun to live forever, and then I can just go join like whatever local cover band has a storage unit practice space next to me. I can just go take their band over. That sounds great.
So. Okay, because this is, again, like, to its credit, the movie kicks into gear pretty quickly, which I was thankful for. We didn't have to wait. We didn't have to wait around.
Is this the best inciting incident ever in a horror movie?
I mean,
is it a vampire who got bored of eternity? Right? He's like, you realize eternity's a curse, and you live forever alone. And all of a sudden, he's like,
why does Stuart Townsend sound
tomb,
like
the
Werner
world has
Herzog
changed.
for you?
It sounded better. So essentially, he hears what is Korn. He hears Korn, and he's like, holy shit, I got to put the old cloak on and get back out there. So, like, he slept through the Beatles. He slept through Michael Jackson.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
He slept through grunge, but he heard Korn, and he's like, that's it.
I legitimately... So Andrea watches that Interview with the Vampire show, and they are going to adapt Queen of the Damned. So Queen of the Damned originally, the book... came out in, I think, 1988. So it's the height of hair metal. So in the original, Lestat actually shows up during the hair metal phase of music. And
Lestat is battling Vince Neil for top of the charts.
Lestat battles Vince Neil for like top of the charts. So
I'm just going to say this now. This is cooler than that. At least we get the goth aesthetic, which works way better for a vampire trying to be the front man of a nu metal band. Just looks cooler and is hotter.
It definitely makes
like,
more sense.
Dressed like David Lee Roth from Van Halen.
I'll give you that. It makes more
sense. A vampire teasing his hair up and using Aquanet inherently destroys the mystique of the vampire.
So this is apparently, so in that interview with the Vampire show, Andrea said this is the next season they're adapting this. So we will get to see that. So we'll see how it stacks up.
What are they now? They're like TikTok rappers? Like Lestat's just like, I gotta get engagement.
They're actually adapting the book, so we are going to get to see Lestat as a hair metal singer. But whatever, it's fine.
Oof. I will say this,
but
just the idea, to my little metalhead heart, just the idea that he heard Korn and was like, now it's time to rise.
I'm sure. I was watching this last night, and I was like, this is Griffey catnip. Like, this is like one of the, like, oh, sweet, I'm not the only one.
Well, I like the idea, too. He wakes up and he's like, I like these new drop D chords, power chords. He's like, I like it. Okay.
Oh, I like that there's only
like
4
really
chords
loose
in
bass
this whole
strings.
song.
Okay, I'm into this. There's a lot of primal energy in this. He doesn't even shop around.
No. He goes to that.
Like, what if it was like a Little River cover band? A Little River Band cover band.
Well, they're in his house. That's why.
Well, sure, I get it. But, like, you think when you'd wake up, you'd be like, I should probably, like, audition. I should go around and see if there are like better bands. But he's just like, no, my vampiric magnetism will overtake this.
I don't know. Lestat moves pretty quickly. Maybe he did like go over to Limp Bizkit's playing space. He's like, that's shitty. There's a DJ too, not into that. And that bassist and drummer are pretty good. But why is the rest of the band here? And then he's like, I'm going to go back to my other band. It's like
my other band. Yeah, it's it's just fucking rad. Like, it's a cool idea for a movie. It's bizarre.
It's a cool idea.
It's weird. And it gives it a flavor that has aged interestingly.
There's a major fallacy, though. Again, and you pointed this out. He slept through the Beatles.
Yeah.
Just
Pearl Jam.
Jazz. Pearl Jam. Like, any other 80s metal band. Pantera.
Well, he claims he slept 100 years. So when
Metallica.
he went to bed, right, we didn't even have flappers yet.
Yeah.
Right? And then he at one point he asked Marius, because it's just not a super insightful movie. He's like, I don't know how you got through the 50s and crushed leather. So it's like he was aware of other shit, and he talked about Elvis. So how much was he actually sleeping?
Maybe that was the thing, is like, maybe he just heard, maybe he was just like sleeping isn't really what he was doing. He's just like resting his eyes basically for 100 years. And he would just perk up like, that's not my thing.
Maybe he's just jealous because Elvis thought he was the king, and he's like, no, Lestat is king. That is the truth. I don't know. But we see him back in the olden days, right? He's like a fiddle slinger. You're like, he didn't hear Charlie Daniels, and he's like, I could do that. Like, he didn't want to join Leonard Skinner and put the violin skills to practice.
But like, well, that's my thing, is like early 20, like early teens, 20s and 30s. Like, you didn't hear, Miles Davis or any of the other jazz musicians of the time. Like, you didn't hear like you basically heard Robert Johnson.
I'll give
Lestat
like, fuck
this.
I think a guy this white just coming in and appropriating jazz Ryan Gosling style is not the move.
I mean, that would have been right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would have just been La La Land. So I guess we got that anyways.
Yeah, La La Land could have used a vampire. That's my contention for certain.
I mean, in terms of draining the blood out of society, I'm sure La La Land did exactly that. So it's fine. It is a vampire movie.
I think I did like, because it starts off and you're like, all right, what are we doing here? We get to the concert. They're taking over the world with their fucking new metal band. They're super famous all of a sudden. They're doing this concert in Death Valley. You're like, all right. I will say, when the movie goes back and kind of, they go to the Telemaskins, right, who have this journal of Marius, one of the oldest vampires they've discovered.
So there's just these people who, the Telemaskins are basically Ghostbusters without any of the cool shit.
Right. If you want Ghostbusters who just refuse to bust, that's what they do. They're like, yeah, we read a lot, but we're not allowed to partake. And it's like,
if you want
what value is this?
If you want Ghostbusters who only bust in private to like books, those are your guys. Like, that's what
they're just busting on leather-bound tomes instead of fighting evil. So like, yeah, we know where the vampire bar is. We're not going to go down there. We can't partake in this.
That's scary.
I was like, what are you, like a wing of the church? Like, what is your role? Who's paying for this? Who's paying for these leather-bound editions? Is this just like old nerds that have passed down library collections and money through the What is the value of the Telemaskins? In the movie, they state, without a doubt, the value of them is nothing. They offer nothing to society. They're watching a vampire who they know is a vampire rise to power and bring all of these fucking broken people out to the desert. And they know it's going to start a vampiric war. And at no point are they like, hey, we could also hold a press conference and be like, hey, we've got the Journal of Lestat. We're going to spill some tea and let everyone know this is bad. Stop going to the merch table. You're paying for blood.
In this world, again, this is the other thing that makes the Lestat thing work, especially now. Because I think in early 2000s, again, it's the mystique of it all. Like, if someone came up and they're like, oh boy, someone came up to me and said, hey, there's a big press conference. I was like, oh yeah, what is it about? Well, people say they have Lestat's journal and he actually is a real vampire. I'm like, cool, wow, that's genius marketing. That is a great idea. Like,
it was like the Blair Witch documentary they aired on the Sci-Fi Channel before that came out that I also thought was real.
Exactly.
There you go. I mean, I would watch, though. That's what the Telemaskins fucking suck. All right, let's get into some of this vampire mythology.
Sure.
'Cause I actually think this is the strength of the movie. I like the backstory section with Marius the most in the movie, right?
Me too. It's good.
I like the maker. They added a couple things in this that I thought were kind of cool, right? So he turns Lestat because he sees this like yearning hunger, right? And Lestat can't get over the fact that no one will know that he's now super cool and a vampire.
Yeah.
Which is great. Bringing some of that human shit with you into vampirism, right? Like Marius just says like, it's the last part of your humanity. You can't do this no more. There's that scene where they're just like drinking people on the beach. And like, oh, what a nice night. All right, time to go. And he's like, no, I think I'm going to get in a fucking fiddle throwdown with these people. And he can't just fiddle, right? Like most people who think they're rock stars, he can't just be part of the song. He tries to take over the song. And I will say it's one of those things you look back and you're like, these are not great choices. The super speed fiddle, right, is pretty lame. But when they see his eyes,
even the girl playing the film, like, this sounds very new metal. So he was right for this.
So you think new metal was something we just had to uncover, right? Like Prometheus when he stole fire from the gods.
You could just hear this weird syncopation and you're like, oh, all right, come on, just like get to the next thing.
But even in this most goofball of scenes, right? When Marius is like, you must stop her, and he just breaks her neck. He doesn't even drink her, right? And he kind of has this realization he will always be alone. He'll never be in a cool band. He'll never be the king of the world. I thought that was kind of a cool vampiric addition, right? Imagine having this power of the gods, right? This immortal, ever-walking thing with superhuman abilities across the board, and you can't brag about it. You can't be like the coolest guy on planet Earth. That's a pretty cool idea, right? And then they add this layer of this vampire king and queen, right? Mm-hmm. That almost drank the world dry, right? All they lusted for was feeding. And in ancient Egypt, they almost destroyed all of humanity to the point where they got so bored of it, they just sat down and turned into statues, right? Yeah. In that scene where Lestat finds the tomb, right? This like watery, torch-lit tomb. And Aaliyah's statue pulls her marble arm off and he bites into the statue. That scene is fucking great. And that scene is cool.
That scene is cool. However, precipitated by, I don't know, bar none, some of the shittiest fiddling I've ever heard. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, he's not even playing a song. Like, this is the problem. No one is playing music in this movie that I'm like, dude, that is timeless and fucking metal as hell. Like, if it was, like, I'm sorry, like, it is not, like, particularly this scene, like, because it starts with him, like, playing in his room, and then Akasha's voice, like, Lestat, and his fiddle bow flies into the corner. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, we need a way to get here. It's all good.
So she heard his music and was called the way he was called. She hears
the fiddling. And then he goes down the hallway and starts playing in front of them. But again, it's not like, here's the thing. If you're going to be playing this music, he's just playing fast and like this weirdly syncopated, like this whole thing. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, that doesn't like feel like vampire longing. It just feels like, I can't masturbate, so I'm just going to go as fast as I can on this thing. Like, it's just very
he's soloing,
strange.
dude. He was meant for a better age of music, right? He didn't want to do this Beethoven bullshit.
Solo is not, I'm going to tell you right now, solos are not part of the new metal aesthetic. I cannot believe you would even say that. If anything,
not
it
new
actually
metal,
is more of a
but
metal
they are an integral part of most metal genres.
I agree.
Right? Like, really, Lestat would wake up and want to be in Dream Theater. That's what he's really looking for.
Yeah, that or like, I would say Dream Theater or...
he's a prog rock vampire, probably.
Yeah, I would say he's definitely Dream Theater. He didn't wake up during Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He was like, oh, that's weird. Like, there's a lot of other bands that I'm like, it's weird that this is the one you woke up for, but okay. It just really means that...
Well, they're the ones that had the Airbnb checkout on his house.
Speaking to Lestat, what speaks to Lestat is, Lestat's choice. That's fine.
Right. This movie is an exercise in, don't know if I love that, but the next thing is pretty cool, right? When he drinks blood from a statue.
Very cool.
And then Marius is like, you've been made stronger. And he wakes up, right? Like, he chains him to the little bed, right, with the flowing curtains. And he wakes up and realizes the statues of Marius are just gone, right? He dipped because he knows Lestat cannot help himself, right? And then Lestat goes on to have all these adventures, right?
Yep.
He comes back, and the idea of this, I have to, through becoming a rock god, I will call out all of vampire culture. Again, a great idea buried in the midst of this movie.
Very cool
right?
idea.
Is that now he is this world-famous rock star, and essentially is throwing down the fucking white glove for a French duel. Like, meet me in the desert.
Yeah, let's go.
And we'll fucking have this out, right? I thought that part of the culture, right, is that we're meant to be hidden. We're meant to stay behind the scenes and hide. is pretty cool, man, because it's one of those things I've always found the hardest to accept with vampires. You think what they do is just make an army of these fucking vampires and then be like, yeah, you guys are my cattle. All right, you're going to bring the local villagers with torches.
Yeah.
I've got 60 vampires. I can take out how many of you before you defeat me?
I think that the nature of being hidden in darkness and that kind of thing is such a huge part of the Anne Rice, like the under society is such a huge part of the Anne Rice aesthetic that because Lestat is in such flagrant violation of all that, that's like that push and pull type thing is what makes it interesting because Lestat's never been that character in these sorts of stories. Like, even Tom Cruise in Interview with the Vampire is a very different kind of like vampire. Like he's
right. Well, I think what it gets to is that kind of like yearning, lonely housewife kind of book, right? That just sells like hotcakes, which is somewhere just right underneath the surface. There's a man who will unlock everything sexually, and I'll get to be free and get extra ear piercings. Right? I'll go from the Telemaskin librarian to sitting in cool, seedy pubs, floating and jittering around at high speed.
I mean, so much eye makeup just so I can meet this guy.
It was a time.
And give him his book back.
I remember the old days of making out when, like, you would get home and be like, why do I have so much face makeup on? It's just like you were wrestling with clowns. You know what I mean? And it was great. It was a great time. You get it on your puka shell necklace and be like, no.
Yeah, like it wasn't a smoky eye. It was just darkness. You're just like, whoa. Like
it was raccoon face. Yeah, it was a real, like, women in that era were kind of forced into this Joker aesthetic. And it's not fair to them. We also weren't doing good. We were in a lot of cargo shorts and things like that.
There's a lot of there's a lot of Jinkos flying around at that time. So it's not like
it was the end of a century. And a millennium. We didn't know how to deal with it. It was the
end of a century, end of a millennium. We had all been through Columbine. Like things were just crazy at that point.
It was crazy. So, and then little did we know that was just life forever now.
Just the beginning.
Woodstock 99 was not the end of an era. It was the beginning of the rest of our lives. And that's brutal. But I thought that was a cool idea, right? And then once we add the queen, right? And we add this idea that by drinking her blood, they can walk in the day. And you're like, all right, so vampires really are invincible. Why are they hiding? Right? Yeah. They're choosing this life. They don't need to. Marius has this line about you must respect your prey. I was like, that's stupid. I don't go out and like feed a cow an apple every time I eat a cheeseburger. That's
Marius is like that
not how it works.
Marius is that conventional character who is trying to hold, because this story particularly is about breaking a lot of vampire rules, but also introducing a lot of vampire mythology that none of us were necessarily aware of, like Queen Akasha. So, like, Marius's role as what I would say is like the traditional vampire is so fascinating because he does like 3 turns. Like, he tries to teach Lestat, and then he's pissed but still defends Lestat.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of, again, like, it's a very weird,
there's this
like,
weird, he's like, you can't be a human anymore, but he wants to act the most human and seems to feel repulsed by having to eat humans. And then Lestat's like, no, actually what I do is the most human. I want to be famous and feed, and humans are, as Count Orlok says in the new Nosferatu, we're an appetite. Yeah. Right? Whatever your appetite is, right? Whether that's corporate ladder climbing or you're an HBO real sex deviant, whatever it is, you're a glutton, right? We are appetites. That's what we are. And so Lestat weirdly is the most human. So him and Marius are having essentially this like philosophical vampire debate through the movie about what their lot is, right? Because vampires, I think, are also interesting in that is that they're monsters born of humans who remain the human facade, right? Like werewolves transform into a beast and can separate those two very clearly.
Vampires are always vampires.
Vampires look exactly like us. They just, are porcelain white and have better cheekbones. And there aren't a lot of 600-pound vampires, right? Like that would be the world we live in now, right? Like these just giant vampires just rising from their scooters. And just crushing, right? Like, how many people does a 600-pound vampire eat? As our morbid obesity epidemic in this country goes, like, I am at least double the weight of Stuart Townsend, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Right? Just based on his tiny body.
I'm at least 2 Lestats.
Yeah, so you're like, how much how many fucking Hot Topic girls do I have to drink? Are they bringing in 6 in a limo? Like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Right?
Okay.
The math is bad as obesity
I have to say,
increases.
okay, so when Jesse was Marguerite Moreau's character, when Jesse, because this is the scene you get the Jonathan Davis cameo because he plays a scalper.
Yeah.
Outside the venue. Okay. So her and another girl get selected to like go basically be food for Lestat. They go up there. He recognizes her. And okay, this is like one of those things when you move to LA, when you live in LA, you know the line is like the line is specifically for people who aren't from Los Angeles. The girl who's like has like chalk white face, that kind of thing. She's like, Lestat, I came all the way from Tarzana. I was like, not far at all. Okay,
You're like,
shut
what?
up.
So like a 45-minute commute. Sick.
45-minute commute, hour and a half
It took
with
me
traffic.
45 minutes to get to Amoeba. It's
Get out of
like,
here.
what?
Go to the mall.
What? Yeah, go to the mall. Go to the mall.
All
Your
I could think
pappy
of the whole
crap.
that was the one I was like, go to the mall. I was like, Tarzana, by the way, you don't even have to take the 101 all the way down to get there,
See,
okay?
now you're doing a Californians.
Yeah, now it's a Californians. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That was one of my favorite moments in the movie, by the way.
But I dig this addition. I like the Vampire King and Queen.
I do too.
I
That
like
was
this
really
coven of
cool.
vampires that are like still trying to defend, this bloodline. I think there's some cool stuff in there, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing I really like that they added to the vampire mythology is you can never drink the last drop.
That was really cool.
If you drink the last drop, that means that your vampiric hunger has taken away your ability to reason.
Yeah.
And you will die, right? Mm-hmm. Which does beg the question, because I always thought if they don't drain you to death,
I think
that you turn them. I'm guessing what it means is that if you just take enough blood, we still die. I think in our body, we have 2 to 3 gallons of blood.
Yeah, something like that.
So if you just leave at least a drop, we still die. But
I think in Anne Rice vampire mythology, it is the giving of vampire blood that turns someone.
Yes, so that movie does that, right? The slicing it open. But I did think that was a cool little addition, right? Is that you can't drink all of it. You have to maintain some human level of control and empathy, which is directly battling this new version of yourself that you're trying to be and that makes you think that you're cool enough to be the lead singer of Korn, essentially. I thought that was cool. If there's something in this movie that is absolutely horseshit that I've never been able to get over.
The Death Valley concert?
No, that part's
Who the fuck
free.
wants to drive out to Death Valley to watch a show?
It's just Burning Man for goths, dude.
I was actually going to go, it's just Coachella for goths, but yeah.
Yeah. Instead of all influencers.
Which in that case, I'd be like, you know what? Stay out there. I don't give a shit.
And it's also smart they did it at night because all those people would just have no tans and be burnt immediately. A lot of Lobster Red depressed people the next day.
If they had done it during the day, everybody would have been a vampire. Like,
all those little black parasols out there. It's like that. Really, goths and old white dudes at golf tournaments just love the daytime
umbrella. We're really
umbrella.
having a run here at the goths. Okay, what were you going to say?
It's fine. There are people. I just don't have the ability to have my wife let me dress like that anymore, dude. I would totally be nipple clamping and fishnetting, dude.
I was going to say, actually,
if I could.
When I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is why Griffey wants to keep the drums in his studio, because...
You know what? You're fucking assault on my drums, dude. I'm going to be the Lestat and take over a band someday. And you're going to be looking back and like, I used to pod with that man, that god amongst men. And I'll be like, yeah. And I'll hit a little solo right in your face.
I don't disagree with that assertion. I'm saying that this is why. You watch this and I guarantee you had this longing, this twinge, where you're like, oh, I could have been Lestat's band.
Yeah, you're supposed to watch the movie and want to be Lestat. That's the whole point of the movie.
In Lestat's band, not Lestat himself.
I don't want to be the fucking drummer.
You want to be that cool drummer?
No, I want to be like a Phil Collins drummer, dude.
He had the Phil Collins setup, man.
Yeah, neither here nor there. We're not here to talk about my goddamn dreams. What is unacceptable in this movie is that they lead us to believe that a normal, basic white human, right? Marguerite Moreau, who's just bringing every girl you went to high school with who's hot, but you think you could still take her to prom energy. Mm-hmm. There's no universe where you drink from Aaliyah in this movie and go to her cool island with her and do that rose petal bathtub shit and then get to walk in the sunlight, that you then come back and go,
You know,
I'm going to cash it in for that normal person.
I'm going to cash in for the Mighty Ducks girl. I think that's what I'm going to do.
It is one of the most ludicrous things in the movie is that, one, you would ever not just kneel before Aaliyah in this movie, and that, two, we're supposed to believe Lestat, this fucking horrifying narcissist we followed through this entire movie, has a quick, you know what, I'm really working for her. That's not good for me. I want to go back to the eternal sadness I was crying about at the start of the movie because I've talked to this girl twice.
Well, it's like
twice and only twice.
It's almost like a corporate takeover thing. Like he sees that he's all of a sudden middle management. He's like, oh, that's not cool. And then he's like,
no,
oh.
I disagree. It's very cool. Because
very cute.
Your boss is fucking Aaliyah.
Yeah, your boss
who
is
then
Aaliyah.
turns around and vampire fucks you.
Yeah. Why would you be a douche about that kind of thing? She
I
has
would
made you
burn
awesome.
the state of Indiana to the ground and not shed a tear for but one night on that island.
Yeah.
But
if
Aaliyah in this movie,
if Aaliyah showed up to your concert after you killed like 5 vampires, then she killed the rest.
Yeah.
Flew you to an island and was like, "Hey, I know that you
held
play
me like an obese
I know
baby.
you play a mean fiddle. I also absolutely adore Korn." You're like, "Whoa, cool. All right, thank you."
Aaliyah's like, "This is the music of kings," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Nice. This is getting better and better."
You're like, interesting choice, but okay.
You want to
cool,
turn on
that's
the
fine.
Daredevil soundtrack next and get back to banging? Come on, Daredevil!
You know, I mean, that
I'm just
was
saying, Aaliyah, from the moment she enters, it's like a Hannibal Lecter thing. She's in it very sparingly.
Yeah.
Doesn't get a lot of run. The scene when she enters that vampiric pub, because she's just
Awesome.
like, I smell him, his scent is getting weaker. And this guy's like, hey, what's up? How about me? And she's like, niche. Right? And she goes on that floor, writhing like that snaky Medusa movement, and turns and summons him. And then just rips his heart out and starts igniting everyone.
awesome.
I was like, that is about as hot as anyone's ever been in a movie. I still think it's like neck and neck with Salma Hayek and From Dusk Till Dawn for hottest vampire ever. But
Sure.
it's like, that is a closer race than I think most people remember. Aaliyah in this movie truly made me believe there were goddesses in the world. You would give up you're telling me, he's like, I can't do it. I got a fucking concert in Sheboygan next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This girl I talked to twice is a English librarian.
Sorry,
Like,
I
what?
really want to. I'm really waiting
What?
to play the Meadowlands, and this librarian really is into me.
I mean, having to refund the tickets is going to be a bitch.
You are the vampire queen and the original vampire, but oh god, like I really want to do this. No, you would
The
drop
idea
everything
that
and go.
Lestat, a vampire, gets to go out and see the sun on this beautiful Mediterranean tropical island, even if it's Caribbean, whatever. He gets to walk out in the sun again. That moment does not have any heft to it the way it should. Imagine a vampire's like, I can fucking walk in the day again? There is no universe. There is no character with the self-control of Superman ever created that would not immediately betray everything they had ever held true and dear and believed to just fucking be on Aaliyah's leash in this film.
Come on,
it is a literal impossibility.
It is the full-blown fallacy of the movie, is that you would choose Marguerite Moreau over, who, by the way, is not a bad-looking woman, by the way. She's a beautiful woman.
Beautiful woman. I'm not trying
However,
to say that, but you can go
Aaliyah
into the
as
world.
Queen Akasha, the original vampire, sorry, like you win
This
all,
is
you
the
lose
thing about
every
hot
time.
people, right? Every town has really hot people. There's hot people everywhere you go. They just exist.
Yes.
There are not goddesses.
She's an
Literal
actual goddess.
goddesses that could fucking give you the powers of an immortal. And what? It is impossible to accept as Lestat starts drinking her and he looks up at Marius with his little red contacts and he's like, I'm with you. It's like, what? No. I was like yelling at my tears like, no. I was like, dude, you got to make the good choice. What are you doing? Like, when they start all jumping on her and biting her, and she's like, Lestat. It's like, yeah, this is my chance. Now I'm going to do some neck snaps.
Yeah.
And now I'm really in. Now she's not going to look for another vampire boyfriend.
Then Marguerite Moreau is a vampire, and I get the vampire queen. Not a bad choice.
You can leave all of them as clumps on the floor, dude.
You can have it both ways, man. Good for you.
You know how many librarians I would eat to fucking sit in that old bathwater? Are you out of your minds?
There would be no more libraries. That's how many.
Dude, I'm sorry. Friends, family, loved ones. Mea culpa, but I'm sure you'll understand in the afterlife. As you see me down on that island. Do I get ripped too? I'm sure her blood would burn off this extra lbs.
He wasn't ripped. He was just super thin. Like,
well, yeah, it's like the I've never eaten solid food body.
Again, it's one of those things you're like, oh, I'm glad he was not Aragorn.
Yeah, that is bizarre. I'm telling you, Aaliyah in this movie is worth watching it alone.
She's very good.
Incredible what she achieved. It is a reminder of the tragedy that we lost. We're not even talking about her great music beginnings.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she seemed like on the verge of being humongous.
She was about to be a superstar.
And, yeah, just tragically lost early. But, boy, she feasted on this movie.
So good.
Feasted. So good. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of as the movie ends and they're just, like, jittering around, London or whatever. I was like, it's cool. It's better than what I'm doing on a Tuesday.
This movie took so long to end. Like, the camera choices, by the way, of, like, how the camera moves in this movie is like, guys, this scene could have, like, this movie I think is, like, I think it's an hour and 48 minutes. Like, it's, like, almost 2 hours long.
This was a perfect, should have been 80 minutes. They should have narratively structured it like Steve Jobs, where it's just only at that concert.
At best, it should have been.
Lestat should have been just backstage.
75 minutes of movie.
Right? Walking around talking to tour managers and shit.
It is crazy to me. Like, they really made a meal out of some of these camera movements. I'm like, guys, I know what scene I'm at. Just get to the point. You are killing me with this.
Yes, and the vampire's jittery, like, fast jumping movements are just not cool.
Nah.
Like, they just haven't aged
I don't even think
well.
by 2002 standards they're very interesting. Like,
the flying sequence where he's like, do you want to know what it's like?
Like, I think
and he takes her, it's like when he's flying with her, Peter Pan style. I mean, that is
so
unbearable. It's one of the worst things ever committed to film.
Bad.
But then they get to the park and he's like, do you want to know what it really is? And he eats that. He like scares another vampire off and eats this like sad lady who's like, hey man, I'm a widow. I'm just trying to like re-find love. And Lestat just mangles her in a park. And then all of a sudden he looks up and he's like, do you want it now? And she's like, what? And he's like, of course not. You're like, that's the good shit. So this movie is it's like walking on a trail that's just too busy with exercises and dogs. And yeah, sometimes you got to jump over dog shit that the people should pick up, but they refuse to. But you're still out on a beautiful hike, right? Like, I do think there is more to love in this movie than not, while totally admitting this is not a great film.
No.
But there's a lot of stuff in it that I still, to this day, really enjoy.
I think there's a lot of pieces that are entertaining. I think here's the thing. There's movies, like these Anne Rice things particularly, are just so beloved. I think that a lot of the times, like this one is a great example, like when it's just like, it's hitting right below the bullseye, where you're just like, oh, almost got it there. Like, oh, not quite as interesting as I thought it was going to be. Like, it's a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's not necessarily like, it's not that it's like shitty filmmaking or anything like that. You're just like, oh, like we just missed like that being cool.
It makes multiple choices that are hurting it more and more as it ages. Like, a lot of the effects work in this is so bad. It's just not good at all. It's a little convoluted with extra characters and vampires we don't need. But again, I think at its core, it asks a lot of interesting questions about the life of a vampire, the life of a celebrity, the way we worship celebrities without knowing anything about them.
Yeah, sure.
I do think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I would say this is a movie that mostly is still kept alive by the lifeblood of that soundtrack. It's very much like a vampiric garden state in that way.
I think for me, because this is like the second, now we have the show, but like this is the second Anne Rice thing that got adapted. I think people have a lot of nostalgic love because you're like, you just want, people really love Anne Rice. Like, I think this is something I didn't realize. Like, I went and worked in New Orleans. This is something I did not realize until we were down there. There are full-blown tours for like Anne Rice vampire stuff. Like, very specifically, Anne Rice vampire novels are huge.
Yeah.
And again, it's just not my thing. Like, I don't really think about that kind of thing. But there's
the hot vampire, dude. We can't get enough.
It's a huge market for it. So, like, for there to be another Lestat movie is such a huge deal. Now, they really wanted Tom Cruise to do it, but he did not end up doing it. He actually just straight up declined. Which, again, I'm like, weird for a guy who wound up doing Rock of Ages to just full-blown decline. But, whatever, it's fine.
Tom Cruise just not into it. He's not into the new metal aesthetic.
Can I tell you the 3 actors that got approached after he declined that were not Stuart Townsend?
Yeah.
Josh Hartnett.
Great choice.
Wes Bentley, which he ended up actually doing something like this in Ghost Rider, so he might have been just as corny.
That's not one for me. That's not working for me.
I'll tell you the one that was the weirdest one I saw. Heath Ledger. He
would have
crushed it.
Heath Ledger would have crushed it.
He would have crushed it.
But the fact that Stuart Townsend jumped fucking Josh Hartnett and Heath Ledger is kind of wild. Because Josh Hartnett was the guy at this phase.
Oh, no. This was Josh Hartnett's time, man. Like, he was the dude.
Yeah, also tall, skinny. He didn't, like, now he's beefed up for Trap. But back then he had that small, I've never eaten body, right? And had, like, the baggy clothes. He would have been great. I don't know. Yeah, I think Josh Hartnett on that list is the one I would like to have seen. And then but I will say, Stuart Townsend is pretty good in this movie. Like, he's a perfectly fine vampire.
He is not a bad. He is not a bad actor at all. I have no problem with Stuart Townsend in the slightest. But he's just.
I don't know. I watched it again and I found myself entertained. I think it's a 2.5, 3-star out of 5 kind of movie. And that's fine. As long as it gives me those little things that keep me captivated enough, I can overlook the many fucking horrifying legions that it has on its body. And that's fine. That's all I was looking for.
Like your movie. That's it.
That's it for Queen of the Damned. This is just the beginning for the Be Still My Heart Montevemour curation. Lots of great movies to come. Stay with us, guys. Make sure you go to the Messed Up Movies Podcast Patreon so you can get more awesome stuff, right? More things that we do exclusively over there. Make sure you go subscribe to Misfit Parade's YouTube. Make sure you go to misfitparade.com. Subscribe to the newsletter there to keep track of all our movies we're making. Tell your friends what we're doing here. 5-star ratings, reviews. Share the clips, TikToks, Instagram Reels, all that good stuff. More than anything, thanks for spending time with us. We'll see you on Friday.